How are you, Rick?
Yeah, good, Bonds. Yeah, nice to hear from you, and nice to have a few of these restrictions lifted. It was a long slog.
Yeah. What did you get up to?
Well, you're gonna laugh. Well, you probably won't laugh, but not only did I not get a haircut like just about everybody else in the country, but I was determined as a mini protest not to put a comb through my hair. So I've had a haircut and I put a comb through my hair for this interview, so listeners wouldn't get or viewers wouldn't get a fright.
Well, you're looking sharp there, Rick. You're looking sharp, mate. And you've had a shave as well, so it's looking good.
Not bad.
So, tell me about what you've been up to the last few months, because you've stopped charter fishing after a very long career. It must be quite a change for you.
It's been huge, Bonds, but to be honest, I look back on it and everybody said, "Oh, you're going to miss it and it's going to tear you to shreds and you're going to be lost." And it's been none of those things. So it was the right time for me to go, but B, and especially with the events that have transpired, for me to get out and not be in the charter industry this year with the White Island eruption, which would have canceled out our trips for over a month. And then, of course, the COVID thing. I mean, my timing couldn't have been better. Not that I was aware of it, but if had I hung on another year, which I did contemplate, it would have been a nightmare year. So very fortunate, and I'm not looking back at all.
Yeah. So I guess some things are meant to be in life, I guess, and that must just be one of them. So tell us a little bit about your actual career charter fishing. Like, how long were you doing it, and how did it all get started?
Wow. Well, I was going to university in San Diego, and my dad was paying for all my expenses, and I let him do that for the first year. But I got a summer job on a boat out of San Diego as a decky, and I really enjoyed it. And I made decent money. I actually was able to pay for my tuition for my education the next year, which gave me quite a bit of satisfaction. So I didn't have to take any kind of a handout from my dad. So, and it just kind of went from there. And I was studying pre-med. I was going to be a doctor following my dad's footsteps. And I just wasn't dedicated enough. All I wanted to do is go fishing, surfing, and diving. And I was a little bit of a rat bag. So I wasn't dedicated to be a medical practitioner. So I went down the psychology route. But the whole time, Bonds, all I ever wanted to do is those other three things, and in particular fishing. So rather than fight it, I finally went along with it. And I got my skipper's ticket at quite a young age, and I started running boats at quite a young age out of San Diego. So that's pretty much how it all started.
Okay, so how did you end up down here in New Zealand?
I got a job offer to come down, and originally it was only for 1 year. And I thought, okay, well, this might be a bit of fun. So I decided we did. I brought my little son, who was not even a year old then, and my wife, and we came down and absolutely, utterly loved it. Just loved everything about New Zealand. And after the year was up, I thought, well, it'll be easy to just go ahead and renew my work permit, but it didn't come down that way. So I had to fight. I had to reapply for citizenship or permanent residency. And that was quite a long, drug out aspect. And I finally got it. And I was so relieved when it finally happened. But it took a few years and a little bit of lawyer's fees and meeting with politicians and all of that sort of stuff. But I'm really pleased to say it worked out, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, anything that you really want to do, and I think that's what a lot of people need to take out of that, is making a choice and sticking to it and doing anything to make it happen, and that's what I don't think a lot of people realize about charter fishing or like even lure making is you made a choice. It's not going to be easy, but you're going to do anything to make it happen. And that's the great thing about charter fishermen is the resilience that you're going to have to go ahead.
No question. And I think, you can extrapolate that just to life experience too, Bonds. I think, if you're not happy with what you're doing and you don't get gratification out of it, the money aspect is important. I mean, we all have to make a living in this life, but as far as, if you're not happy what you're doing, you're only fooling yourself. And so I think I've been very fortunate and I've had no regrets. And coming to New Zealand has just been such a huge part of that. So I tell people when I finally go, don't you regret it? I've actually lived my dream.
Yeah. Well, you can't ask for any more than that. So Rick, you got down here, and what was like? You obviously coming from California, you were right into catching kingfish. Tell us a little bit about the differences between catching them there and catching them here.
Night and day. Um, well, California has got a lot of people, and they've still got a pretty good fishery there, to be honest with you, Bonds. And kingfish is king there. Kingies, people absolutely love yellowtail kingfish. That is a big deal in California. Always has been and probably always will be. So, but there, because there's so much pressure, there's so many people. I mean, and when I came here to New Zealand, to catch a kingie, very rarely could you use more than about a 6 hook, a size 6, which is probably about the size of your thumbnail. You had to have a nice lively bait or a live squid. And if you use more than about 15-kilo trace, you're fooling yourself. And a big fish, like the biggest fish I ever saw in California, or yeah, ever saw, was 20 kilos. And really anything over 10 kilos was really quite a prize fish. So when I came here, I mean, we were using 150, 200-pound wire, 10 baro game hooks, a whole skippy or a small albacore. We had a guy use some dog chain one time, which worked. He caught a fish on a dog chain. So, to see the fish that were just so uneducated here, and the finesse levels just they weren't required at all compared to where I came from. So that was the huge difference, aside from the size of the fish. Physically, like the first fish I ever saw come up in New Zealand here was probably 26, 27 kilos. I was almost afraid to gaff it. I'd never seen anything like that big. So there were so many changes. And I mean, that very first day, boy, it was a huge game changer for me. And it just went on from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, coming and seeing that, you obviously hooked, and that's what led you into carrying on and is, taking you down this road of doing this for the rest of your life. But with the amazing kingfishing, we also, obviously you have a year-round fishery, and you used to take the boat north, and you obviously did some trolling as well. And you were in an area where yellowfin tuna fishing out of Whakatane was a very big part of the New Zealand fishery. Tell us a little bit about that fishery as well, and how you used to actually fish for them and the techniques that you would have used.
Well, to be honest with you, when I first arrived in Whakatane, there had been a handful of yellowfin caught, and there was a few people that fished for them, but it was really not a big deal. Shark fishing was a big deal. Everybody would go out in Burley and heaven forbid, and look back on it. I mean, it's quite common. People would bring anything between 6 and maybe 10 or 11, 12 makos or blue sharks back to the weigh station, weigh them, and then take them back out and dump them. I mean, we've come a long way since then, thank God. But yellowfin just wasn't a big deal. They were certainly there, no question. But it took me about 3 years after I arrived in New Zealand to actually realize just how good the fishery was and actually, tap into it. And initially, it was just trolling with lures. Well, when I first came, all they were doing is trolling white chicken feathers that were impregnated into a lump of lead. That was the trolling lures. And I mean, I brought with me some Zucker lures, which are still around today. And they were made by 2 mates of mine that lived in Oceanside, California, John Lloyd and Billy Miyagawa. And both of those guys made fantastic lures, and they were well ahead of their time. And so I brought a few of these lures out, and everybody was going, ooh, ah. And of course, they worked a real treat. And and people are still using them today, as well as many other lures. So anyway, long story short, we started trolling and very effectively, and we had some wonderful yellowfin fishing. And then, of course, we started getting onto the meatball aspect, and we started using dead bait and cubing and live mackerel and pillies, and it just kind of went from there, Bon. So the fishery was fantastic, and I'm sorry to say that at the time, this is back in the late 80s and through most of the 90s, we thought they were limitless. We thought yellowfin, I kind of likened it to like in the Wild West, the United States. They just used to shoot bison for the heck of it because there was hundreds of thousands of them. And we thought, hey, these fish are here forever. I'm not sure that we wasted many, but we probably didn't take them anything. We took them for granted is what I'm saying. So to see these yellowfin almost disappear and then come back in dribs and drabs has been a real eye-opener and shows you just exactly what man can do to any species if they really want to.
Yeah, it's and they just disappeared.
More or less. I mean, But the last of it really was about the turn of the century. You know, we had decent fishing. We had real good fishing, 99, 2000. And then they went downhill real badly. And we thought, oh, well, this is just a cyclical thing. They'll come back. And then we had a pretty good year. 2005 was a pretty good year. Short, but good, real hot fishing. And we thought, oh, all is forgiven. And basically, that was the last year that we've really seen good meat, consistent meatball fishing for yellowfin. The meatballs are still there, but unfortunately, the yellowfin aren't. And there's skippies and small kingies and albacore that push these meatballs up, but the yellowfin are sadly lacking.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you mentioned in your about your kingfish there, that your techniques when you came to New Zealand were quite rugged compared to the finesse that you had to use in California. You obviously developed a bunch of techniques when you were tuna fishing. Tell us how those techniques. Was there anything like trolling lures or developments that came around that were game changers for you during that time?
Sure. We used to. Well, things got a little bit harder, and of course, you'd have your hard days as well. So we started lightening up on our leaders. Then when fluorocarbon came in, we started using that, thinking that would be a good thing, and it was. We started using spreader bars, and we started using birds, and all of them had, varying success, on the day at the various times. So it was kind of neat to see that going on. Then another thing that we did, we would troll. But then when we would get a strike or get into an area of surface feeding fish that maybe weren't taking the lures, we would start casting jigs out and surface cranking those jigs in, which basically is just like what you'd be doing with a propper or a stick bait now. And we had some great luck doing that. So things evolved a lot as we went on. And I guess we got a little bit smarter, and I guess we had to as the tuna fishing got a little bit more difficult, and they started refining their wants and needs. And that certainly was the way with kingfish as well.
Yeah. No, it's interesting how things changed. And just in general, how tackles got better over the years, and our techniques have got better to catch more fish because they're getting harder to catch. So aside from the king fishing and the yellowfin fishing, you always were out there trolling the deep, and you had some pretty spectacular captures. And I know you've had some great battles with marlin and that over the years. Tell us a little bit about how your marlin season would go, and then maybe run us through a couple of one of the big fish that you guys have caught over the years.
Wow.
That stands out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, for us, we didn't even bother with yellowfin for a few years, and then we got pretty excited about them and started fishing them, and then we realized, well, hey, there's a few marlin around as well. Because we used to think, oh, well, we're south of the Bay of Islands. There's not many marlin around. Well, how wrong we were. Our best season ever was 75 for a season. I think we had 50 a few seasons, but typically sort of 20 to 40 marlin for a season. And that was really rewarding. And we started developing our techniques with marlin as well as time went on. But yeah, we've had some really long battles, Bonds. Unfortunately, the majority of them the long ones were all unsuccessful. The longest one, and probably the most painful to think about now, is one where one angler played a blue marlin for 32 hours. That was a real toughie, and that fish got me into writing. I do a little bit of writing, and I enjoy it, mainly about fishing. I'm not capable of writing about much of anything else. But that fish really, it took us about 70 miles north of White Island, and it was quite an ordeal for everyone on board, the angler as well, obviously, and all of us. So that was quite a deal. We've had a number of other battles, long battles, and unfortunately almost all of them have been negative result for both yellowfin on light line and for marlin as well. So yeah, we've had some real knockdown drag-outs. All I can tell you is the longer the battle goes, your chances start to dwindle. And if you go into darkness, that is not your friend. So those are two little bits of information I can tell you from firsthand.
Yeah, so you run a totally different setup. We'll get onto probably my passion now is the marlin fishing, and I always like talking to you about that because you run your boat very differently to a traditional game fishing boat with outriggers and all that kind of thing. Tell us about your traditional spread behind your boat.
Well, basically, Bonds, we trolled, if the weather is good enough, which it normally is, we would troll 5 lures. So we'd troll a shotgun lure right in the middle and high up. we'd troll a lure in each one of our corners, and then we'd have 2 flat lines that are just below those corner rods. So a spread of 5 lures, and we would alternate them. The flat lines would be the closest, then the corner rods, and then the one that was furthest back would be the shotgun. And that's pretty much what we did in right throughout my whole career, and it seemed to work pretty well. We never ever bothered with outriggers. I think sometimes I probably was a bit foolish because I think outriggers could have possibly improved our catches in various ways, but we never really went with it. And to be honest, I don't know how much it really hurt us in the long run. So yeah, that's pretty much it. 5 lures spaced out pretty much in that sort of a V pattern.
Okay. So, I mean, over the years, we talked about in the past and just earlier about the development of techniques for kingfish and techniques for your tunas and stuff like that, and advancements in tackle. Tell me about how your actual lure fishing advanced over the years, and what you ended up doing by the end of your career as opposed to the start of your career.
That's huge. It's been a real learning curve. And for anybody that says there's nothing new under the sun, I strongly disagree with that. And fishing is a prime example. We've seen so many things just in the last decade or 15 years that have really turned the industry upside down and revolutionized it in so many different ways. And I'm sure we've got more to come yet. There's a lot of bright sparks out there, and they'll figure out ways to bamboozle fish that otherwise wouldn't be caught in traditional methods, and that's great to see. Well, you'll laugh. Initially, when I came from San Diego, none of our lures would pop. We fished basically with bullet sort of shaped lures, and if a lure came up and popped, we thought it was doing something wrong. And so that was my school of thought in coming from San Diego and basically fishing for albacore. And thinking back, I mean, you probably don't want your lures popping for albacore, but that would be one of the few that you wouldn't. And so anyway, we made sure that all of our lures stayed down. We didn't like to see them coming up and grabbing air. And let's face it, with a bullet, they weren't grabbing much air anyway. So that we went along in that mode for quite a while, probably 8 or 10 years, I suppose. And then some other lures started coming on, and the cup faces and all the Kona heads and all that sort of thing. So we put those out, and geez, we had some great luck. And it was a little bit like a light bulb going off. So and the other thing we did and did right up until a few years ago, which I'll really want to touch on, or more than touch on, and that was when we got bit, we just continued for a while, and sometimes quite a while, and we would run off quite a bit of line. We did 2-hook rigs, we did single hook rigs. We put them well back in the skirt. We put them right up, behind the heads. We did everything in between. So we experimented a heck of a lot, and especially when we went up north, up in the far north and Three Kings, where we would have some pretty nice fishing for marlin, and you'd get a lot of strikes, and you could afford to experiment. Down in the Bay of Plenty, we often didn't have very good marlin fishing, and you might only get 1 or 2 strikes in a day, and you really couldn't afford to muck around too much. You really tried to get the hook in those and land them. But once you got up north, sometimes you're getting as many as 10 to 15 strikes a day, and you thought, oh, well, we kind of blew that. Let's do something different because there'll be another one coming along pretty soon. Yeah. So that worked out.
Fishing without fear, Rick.
That, you got it. Very well said. So anyway, we changed our theories a lot, Bonds, and really at the end of the day, and we ran out our lures, our line, mainly for 2 reasons. First, to put a bit of line in the water, maybe improve our hookup rate, or so we thought. And the other thing, of course, and still is the same thing today, is the fact that we would, if there was any other fish there, and often there was, we would like to entice a multiple strike, get a double, treble, or even more. So that was a reasoning and keeping going. But yeah, so I'm not convinced that running out all that line is a very good thing to do, and in particular with a fast fish like a blue marlin, Bond. So, and I mean, I'm trying to teach you how to suck eggs. I mean, not many people have caught many more blues than you, especially at Cape Verde and stuff. So, those fish being so fast, and if they're going the opposite direction, you can dump one heck of a lot of line in the water, which you've only got to get back, and it's going to be pretty painful, and it might cost you dearly at the end of the fight, and especially if your fish dies, and there's every chance for that. So, we've changed a lot, and hook configurations, sizes. how we do things. And then, of course, bait came along, and we interspersed bait in along with our lures. So a lot of things have changed. And I kind of, in some ways, I wish I was still fishing, because I had things I wanted to do, and hypotheses I wanted to test out. And I really enjoyed the interview you did with Eddie Lawler. He's a very talented guy and has got a heck of a lot of knowledge. And some of his little gems that he brought out in the end of that interview was well worth it. So, which I'm sure I could use. But anyway, we move on.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about actually what you ended up doing. Like you've gone from running a lot of line out. What did you end up doing, and why did you end up changing?
Okay, well, the big game changer for me, and you've been a huge part of that, is the light gauge hooks. And really, it went right against the grain, Bonds. I looked at these things. I mean, visually, they're the size of a snapper hook, what you'd be going if you were going for a 15 to 20 pound snapper. And I'm thinking right away, I'm skeptical, because I'm an old sucker, and old suckers are skeptical and cynical. Yeah. And I'm one of those too. So it took me quite a while to even put one of those rigged lures in the water. And I only put one in. So, but then my deckies were keen, and being that much younger than me, a third of my age really, I thought, well, I'm going to let them, they run the deck and they do a damn good job. So one by one, we started phasing out all of our regular hooks, and we went with your light gauge hooks. And boy, what a game changer. For starters, the thing that was just really, I had to really fight myself and condition myself to do, was to stop the boat when we got bit. I mean, instead of run out this copious amounts of line, you stop the boat. And I mean, the fish is jumping all over the place. It's either hooked or it's not. I mean, light gauge is not 100%. But I mean, instead of a third hookup rate, if you're lucky, I'm thinking all of a sudden it's at least 60, maybe 70, 80% hookup rate. So you stop the boat. And instead of letting that fish, or forcing that fish to take out several hundred meters of line, you've got them 50 to maybe 100 meters max. And man, oh man, is that exciting stuff. So as soon as I got my head around that, and that's only a few years back, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed following the fish a lot more. The visuals were right there. People were just loving it, because it's right in your face. I mean, we got some wonderful photos, some wonderful video, and instead of videoing a little white splash that's over the horizon, here's a fish that's right in your face. And we not only did our luck go up, but our appreciation and our enjoyment of these marlin captures. So the whole deal was a big game changer for me.
Yeah, and what about, because obviously, you just mentioned that it's a very small hook, and that's what we use for catching kingfish or snapper. What was it like when you got a big fish on?
Well, funny you'd say that, because I was always thinking that, look, let's face it, in New Zealand, 90% of our billfish captures are going to be stripies. And stripies are notoriously one of, if not the hardest billfish in the world to catch on a lure, without doubt. It's just been proven over and over. I guess the only one that might be harder would be a sailfish. So anything that we can do to improve what we're normally going to find. That first year that we used your light gauge hooks, we actually we landed 6 blues. And some of them were really nice fish too. I mean, the majority were over 200 kilos, and a couple of them definitely pushing 300. And of those 6, we got 5 of them on the light gauge hooks. And I was absolutely gobsmacked. I mean, I'm thinking, oh, we're going to bend them out. We're going to break them. We're going to do all sorts of things. And we did. I'm not going to, try to BS anybody. And you can do that with any hook, really. I mean, if you point load a fish, it's point loaded, you're going to break a hook, even a big, properly, done game hook. So we did a few. But of those 6 blues that we landed that season, we got 5 on your light gauge. And the very first one, which may have been the biggest, probably a good 250, maybe more, that fish was really stubborn at the boat, and it was trying to go under the boat, even though we were idling forward. And I just told my decky, hang on, and he hung on. And I'll tell you, there was extreme pressure put on that, and we kept just looking at each other any minute. We're going to just get back a broken or a bent hook, and we got that fish. And I was like, I was blown away. Obviously, the fish was hooked properly, corner of the mouth, and we were very lucky. And the hook was straightened to a large extent. We couldn't use it again, but we got that fish. And it just boosted my confidence level sky high with the bigger fish that we, sometimes come in contact with.
Yeah, and like, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. Is I mentioned it before about fishing with no fear, and that builds confidence, and then you're fishing with confidence. And you've got process and technique down with that style of hook. Now you're potentially hooking more fish,
Yeah.
and you've got the skills to catch them now.
Totally agree. And I mean, just success builds confidence. It's just simple. And that's anything in life. And fishing is just one aspect of that. But yeah, I mean, when you have a little bit of bad luck, you can start second guessing yourself, and it just, there's no good outcome. So to have that, to really put faith in something, put a lot of energy and effort to it, and then get the results, man, you can't beat it. And that's what we had with the light gauge. And especially with the stripies, man, we just thought that, that was really the way to go. And we were very, very enthused, and we fished those light gauge right up until virtually I sold the boat, and we caught our last one on a light gauge. And no, it's just the way we went. It was the way we rolled. The only regret I've got, as I said, is that I didn't get smarter, or you didn't convince me or bring out your hooks a few years sooner, because I would have really enjoyed a few more years of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're all learning, and I mean, I learn every day talking to people like yourselves about that style of fishing. I mean, if you would have told me 5 years ago or 6 years ago that we'd be fishing with a snapper hook, I would have laughed at you, Rick, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's right. And things are changing. I mean, look at the things that have happened in the last decade or so, Bonds. I mean, the mechanical jigging and soft plastics and stick baits and some of these things that are been total game changers and have really put the fishing industry on its head. And those that have able to adapt quickly not only have done well from a financial standpoint, but they've also had the results that come with it. It's just been absolutely fantastic. So it's been really, really neat to see these things. And the light gauge has just been one aspect of that. And it's been really neat to be part of that. I would have been really angry if I retired a few years earlier and never even got to mess around with that on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. Oh, well, you had a good taste of it anyway, Rick, and I'm sure there's plenty more of it to come. So what's the plan now, mate, that you've got rid of the boat? I hear you bought yourself a little boat.
We have. Yeah, I've got it's a little 4.2 meter center console. And it's a little cutie, and while it's really mainly for inshore fishing and snapper and that sort of thing and kingies, Bonds, I'm quite determined to catch a marlin out of it, and I think I can, and I will, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. The other thing is, I've got a few things in the fire. Of course, the COVID thing has really put everything back, just like everything in life, really. But I'm hoping to guide some trips overseas, Prince Edward Island for the giant bluefin tuna, Mexico. And of course, I've got my own aspirations. Really looking forward to getting back to Aitutaki. I've kind of fallen in love with Norfolk Island and everything that's on offer there, and a few other things that I'm really looking forward to doing with my retirement. And going to do a little bit more writing. And I think I'm really enjoying being out of the fishing industry as such. Not having to worry about going out to sea for 250 days a year has been a real game changer for me, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I want to spend a lot more time with my family. I just dote on my grandkids. They're just the apple of my eye. And, spending more time with my son and his family in Hawaii will be a big part of that too. So I'm really looking forward to what life has to offer me in these latter years of my life. I'm really keen about it.
Nice, Rick. Well, hey, thank you very much for your time, and we wish you. I wish you all the best with that retirement and the time with the family and your adventures ahead. So, thank you very much, mate, and we'll talk again very soon.
Been a pleasure, Buns. Thank you so much, and thanks for all your wonderful products and that we've used a lot over the years and had some wonderful success. So, you're a real credit to the industry. So, thank you for being there as well.
You're welcome, mate, and take it easy.